like to acknowledge that the episodes in this series are produced on the traditional unceded lands of the Coast Salish peoples, which includes the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. We thank them for allowing us to be their guests.
Chapters at the end of the book, and one of them was kind of like where we would go if business as usual is allowed to evolve, and the second one was maybe a little more hopeful and utopian even, and just looks at what might happen. So looking at where we will go, and particularly if we don't define the clean energy transition and try to have a sensible way of rebuilding our clean economy or our society in a better way, smarter, more efficient. Right. The road leads towards more mining, obviously, and we're going to have to mine more no matter what. But we're talking about probably mining the deep ocean, and on land where it's possible, we're going to dig deeper. There's some actually kind of exciting things on that front, and really interesting things too. Is that I talked with this one academic who was telling me about how in the future we're going to use technology in a lot of new ways to mine. And an example he gave was that the principle of organization would be to emulate like an ant colony and use swarms of things, whether they're to do mining. And what he meant by that was that they might be little machines that are dropped to the bottom of the ocean and go around autonomously and pick up metal. They are, in some places, they're already using bacteria to that decompose the rock, and they excrete metal, and there's also like a lot of different plants that they can use that just suck up metal, and from their tissue and their sap, you can actually, they call it cropping for monetary return, which I always found a funny thing, where it's converting solar energy into, I don't know, just little mini mining machines. And you could plant those all over contaminated sites and harvest them. And it's cool, and it's already happening in some places. Like certain species of willow and certain grasses are just suck this stuff up, which is great for even remediating sites and cleaning stuff up. The metal deposits that are available to mine a lot of them are pretty well picked over. Sure. When you talk about all the base metals and precious metals. And so what we're seeing now are mines being established in places that probably would never have been established before, like riskier, politically risky places. Like there's a massive gold copper mine being built in Pakistan in a kind of in an area that has historically had a lot of civil unrest. That's a risky venture. There's a huge deposit of rare earths in Afghanistan that's kind of no one's ever really touched, because it's kind of a dangerous place to invest that much money. Maybe we'll see that develop. There's a huge niobium mine in a section of the Brazilian Amazon, which is pristine. It's like this unroaded area. And mines of the future, though, are going to be more automated, and that'll be sold to the public as a boon to safety, right? Because there's less human beings on there to get hurt. There's a mine in Arizona called Resolution, which two of the biggest mining companies in the world are trying to get off the ground, and it's an enormous potential mine. And this thing goes more than a mile deep, and it's really hot down there, and it's going to be kind of this mine of the future where there's sensors everywhere. A lot of driverless vehicles, and that's great in some ways, but historically communities have bought into mines because there's relatively lucrative jobs. And so when you take that away, what's in it for people in the mining zone? Really? One thing that another bottleneck that we're going to have to grapple with, and it's part of that social license piece, is mining companies and governments will probably have to get together and come up with ways to pay communities to basically tolerate their presence there. Once a so-called world-class deposit is known, it becomes like a zombie, and so it stays alive. And so like maybe the political circumstances, or maybe it's unacceptable to develop it at this point in time. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, especially if we're facing scarcity, it becomes possible. So what sort of trade-offs will we make? I mean, again, everything boils back to us defining what this clean energy transition is and how we can navigate it without running over the planet like locusts, basically.